were quite happy. They seem to enjoy it. We have a little trailer that shows their reactions, and they largely are ecstatic about the experience. We have, at this point, we have the DDD. We know the technical approach, the architecture of the system that we're trying to create with the game. We have plentiful market research that assures us that we're hitting a viable target, and we're starting to pre-pro. What is this phase? So I briefly explained earlier this morning that pre-production is the time where we create the first two expressions of the game that we're building. What this means in practice is that we will build a vertical slice, which can be categorized once again as a level of a multi-level game or X minutes of gameplay. I would say, rule of thumb, 5 minutes minimum of actual gameplay in the game. Now, what I would normally recommend is that you don't build the first level, because generally the first level should be a tutorial-like experience. So the first 5 minutes, or the very first 5 minutes of gameplay could very well be a tutorial-like experience. Let's not do that. Let's build in the vertical slice 5 representative minutes of gameplay. And I think that would be sufficient to derive some timeline and cost information that we can build a full budget and resource plan for our game, which is very important. And it's, from my perspective as a business owner, is the ultimate objective of the pre-production phase. But in addition to doing so, we want to make sure that we have the game design document fully fleshed out. So in the previous stages, we had the product requirements document, which is a concise form of the game design. And if you remember, I was saying that it's like between 10 and 15 pages. The game design document is a beast, 50 pages plus, even for a casual mobile game. So I remember when I first started working at Activision, towards the end of my first year there, we started work on this game called Vampire the Masquerade. I'm not sure if you guys remember the game.
Yes.
Nihilist Software was the developer. It was the first Vampire the Masquerade game. There were several. The best one in the series was Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. Bloodlines was awesome. And they're still making mods for it to this day. You know, it's a really amazing community. Kind of shows you create an amazing game, the community will be there forever. You know, modding and just, nerding out. And I remember that at some point, the producer for that title left the game design document for Vampire the Masquerade on the QA floor. I was much younger back then and just started in the industry, and I didn't know all this stuff. All this stuff is the result of 20 years of hard pain, battles, and scars,
bruises, millions of dollars.
Yes, and the Vampire the Masquerade GDD was a folder this thick, was thicker than the thickest Bible that you've ever seen. I think it had about 1,000 pages in it. And the full raw lore of Vampire the Masquerade, the board game, and by the way, there were a series of novels in the universe, was contained within it. And it had for each, alright, so if you're not familiar with Vampire the Masquerade, it's a board game about various families of vampires, like sects, lineages of vampires, that can be, that are competing for power and influence in the world today. So the basic premise is that vampires are not a single species, that they are, the Nosferatu-like vampires, and they're the Dracula-like vampires, and they are demonic beings like vampires, and they're Egyptian pharaoh age-like vampires, ancient vampires. Anyway, so they are competing for power and influence in a modern day setting. They are not known to humans, so they're hiding their true identities, but they are wielding considerable power. And each of them are dwelling in very particular settings. So for example, the Nosferatu-like vampires are populating the sewers of New York. That's basically where they stay most of the time. The Dracula-like vampires are the financiers of New York. You know, they're generally Wall Street financiers and lawyers and lobbyists. And they dabble in politics and they try to control the destiny of mankind. And they look at mankind as a, I don't know, cattle. But they also have vampires that are much more friendly to humans. So anyway, the lore is very deep. It's as deep as you'd find for Star Wars or Star Trek. And there are, you know, entire communities of writers that have added to the lore over time. And in order for them to create their game design document, they dove deep into the lore. They tried to understand it all and reinterpreted everything for the game. So they took elements of the lore that pertain, that could fit well within the game and describe that. And you know, there's obviously lots of text, but also images and settings and lots of mood boards in it.
And how alive is the document during the process? I mean, it's being changed on a daily basis, basically.
Okay,
right?
so when I got to it was, you know, the title was already in QA, right? So it was already around alpha stage when I saw it. And it seemed to me that it was a very labored document. The problem with GDDs, even for simple games, is that thing changes literally every day. And you require incredible discipline to keep it updated. And you may argue that it's not necessary. We're agile these days. We just iterate, figure things out, tribal knowledge, we keep it in our minds. Here I have it on a piece of paper. It could work for very small teams, but I will argue that not even for small teams will work, because inevitably what is creating the absence of the document is misalignment. I understand what I want to understand, because I am an artist and I have a vision for the product. And the guy next to me is also an artist. He also understands, or she understands, what she wants to understand. You know, these divergent visions require a common denominator. The producer has to manage on the basis of the true north, and the true north needs to exist somewhere, clearly spelled out for all to see. And if we decide to change the true north, it's like changing a constitution, okay? The constitution of this game shall be changed if all the parties agree that this new direction is desired. And it's, you know, amply justified and argumented. So I don't see how you can manage the true north in the absence of that. Right. It would require everyone to have prodigal memories.
The game designer, how does this work in Amber? I know that there's a game designer guild, and that they help out each other with their knowledge through all the departments. The game designer is the one in charge to have this super rigorous discipline, or is it the producer? At which level is it actually? Who's responsible for it, or does it depend on the team?
Okay, so this is probably a good, since you mentioned the guilds at Amber, it's probably a good point for me to like stop for a second and explain how we're structured internally. I mentioned that we have guilds in the past, but I don't think I've made given this like time of day. So give me 1 second if you don't mind. Okay. So unfortunately I cannot fit this on
full screen
very well. So I'm going to have to scroll down as I explain. So all our game development disciplines are organized into guilds. The reason, and by the way, the guilds are responsible for two things: people management and discipline improvement. So you mentioned Kaizen earlier. The guilds are primarily responsible for Kaizen. They're supposed to make their discipline better every year. And they manage the people. So the guild leader will manage all the people that he or she has assigned to him or her. And those people are functionally placed into studios. And the producer within the studio has functional tasking responsibility of all the resources placed in the studio. They don't report to him or her directly. And there is a reason for that. The producer, he's managing the true north, the product, the business. The people are not his concern. And not his, well, of course, as a producer, you need to concern yourself with people, but they're not his primary concern. Not at all. He has to get the job done.
Yeah.
Okay? The guilds, we separated the people management from the product management because the product management is such an all-consuming affair. You simply don't have time to grow and mentor people. You don't. I mean, I've seen producers that are extraordinary, that are amazing people mentors, but being a producer is a tough job. You are dealing with constant pressure from all directions. Right. You are being challenged by reality every single day. Managing risk on a project is a tough task to take on. Managing people on top of it and all the drama that happens in game teams. You know, we're artists.
Right.
Enough said.
At the end of it all. It's like it's so hard.
It's tough. You know, it's tough to align hyper intelligent, super motivated creatives. You know, they all see the world in like amazing ways, but distinct and different ways. And sometimes, you know, sparks fly. Managing people is a very consuming affair as well in that kind of environment. And you need to be able to talk to an artist and be able to talk to a designer in a way that motivates him to pursue a long-term career. You need to kind of create for each individual on your team a career development plan. The producer is a little bit of a homo universalis, meaning that they dabble a little bit in everything, but they are the master of none. Mm-hmm. And if you're the master of none, you simply cannot grow specialists effectively. You're going to make mistakes because your knowledge is not as deep, and because you're not perfecting your knowledge. You're not crafting, you know, this perfect diamond that is game design or, you know, art in a game. So you'll notice that the way we're organized for Lorraine, which is a mid-core studio, is that we have the executive producer. In this particular case, it's a little bit strange because NCSoft forced our head of product development to become an executive producer on the title, but basically he's not. You know, he's still our head of product development. We have a producer, and that's Octavian, okay? And he has another producer helping him out. Lorraine is a little bit different because you notice there's a bunch of people in this structure. There are like 41 people in working on the NCSoft game. It's a massive title. Lots of content, lots of, 100 hours of gameplay, right, at launch. But Octav is the producer in charge. And he's part of a production guild that is led by Mihai Srijan, okay, who also does double duty in that role with the head of studios. Normally, so these are some of the things that you have to take into consideration when you're structuring an organization, is that the world is not ideal. In an ideal world, Mihai Srijan is just the head of studios, controlling art, design, and production guilds. And he'd have somebody else managing the production guild. We don't have that person yet. We'd like to have that person. Yes, and then the head of the production guild then controls all the studio heads. We are all producer-led in the studios. So the studio is always led by a producer or a variation of the title. Senior producer, executive producer. Yeah? And those guys manage the studios. Now, look a little bit at the design guild. We have a ton of designers. We're very design heavy. for good reasons. You know, a lot of the games that we make have a lot of content, and especially when we're talking about free-to-play, you need tons of designers to design not just the features, but you know, so the events, right, the live ops components. And so the head of the design guild is this guy called Solo. And he has underneath him 3 other guild leaders because he has so many people in his organization. So he needs to create a substructure of guild leadership to manage all these people. Because management theory says the optimal level of people that should be managed by an individual is 6. You can have up to 8. If you have less than 6, the manager is slacking somewhat. You know, like 4, it's kind of a slacking situation. But 6 is the ideal number. And sometimes we go up to 8. And we'll never let a structure have, from a people management perspective, inflate when you have like, you know, when you have 15 people that you're managing directly, you're not really managing them anymore. You're kind of just trying to keep balls in the air, you know, barely surviving from one day to the next. Let alone, you cannot do mentorship effectively, you cannot evaluate them effectively. It's a disaster. I don't recommend it ever. So we split our guild structures in order to make sense of scale. Okay, the art guild, we have a guy called Marian Poiana, and he has 2 tracks here. This is again a dysfunction that we have to fix. He has a user interface, UX, and an art. So he has some UI artists in the UX guild. Normally we should have a guild leader just for UX UI, because we consider that to be a separate discipline. It is part of art, but it is its own specialization, right? So we split it up. And then he is managing the artists. And you'll find here all the gradations of artists. First of all, every project, we consider that every project should have a dedicated art director. So here you have Johnny, he's an art director. For Avalon, our casual studio, we have Boto. Boto Marco, but that's a great name. Boto is his short name. Abbreviation? No. Nickname. Okay, here we go. And then we have, for example, a tech artist, a concept artist, a VFX artist, an animator, and a 3D artist. That's a good exemplification of what a large variety of art roles you can find on the team. And that's in an environment where we did quite a bit of art outsourcing for this title, the NCSL title. And that's not included here. These are just artists that we contracted at some point in the past. We already have all the assets we need, but at some point we need.
And the guys that are outsourced would be managed by Marianne?
Or Marianne would manage the art outsourcing activities as well. Yes.
Across the board?
Across the board. Working through his art directors.
Oh,
remember,
yeah.
on each team he has a very senior guy that normally has like, you know,
the one
5 to 10
feedback.
different projects in his portfolio. He's seen it all, done it all, you know, and he has all that expertise. Here you notice that you have an art director. His name is Young Choi, working with another art director. What is that all about? That's another dysfunction. That means we felt the need to bring in a consultant. This guy is based in LA, expensive AF. But we felt that this team needed the support, you know, in order to hit the visual target that the client wanted. Okay. Notice another, I mentioned UA UX, and my apologies. Notice that UX is in design, in the design guild. UI is in the art guild.
Interesting.
Of course, because you know these are the wireframes, right? This is the flow.
The flow.
That's a design function.
Versus how it looks.
This is
the buttons and.
Does it look pretty?
Yeah.
This is the look pretty. Yeah.
This is the pretty world.
Yeah. Okay, let me scroll down.
Nice. Oh shit.
Okay. So, production, art design, they go to the head of studios. Engineering, business intelligence, project management, and services go to the head of R&D. And why did we split this? Why do we have this superstructure of guilds? that is separated. Because if we placed all the guilds under the head of studios, who is ultimately the head of the production guild, because our producers are leading the studios, then we don't have that useful dichotomy between project management and production. We need the project managers to be independent of the producers, to be able to call bullshit. No, you're not going to have me work on this new feature, or iterate on that old feature, or add all this content, because you're going to blow the budget and you're going to blow the timeline for delivery. So you need these guys to be able to speak truth to power. So you can't put them under the production guild leader, as it were.
Cool. So it's like a veto, the guys that actually say this doesn't go.
Yeah, so small projects, you know, the producer will have to like think with, you know, different sides of his brain to like balance it, like a chess player that plays against himself, you know. But on big teams, let's not do that. You know, let's actually separate the two and have project managers, you know, task the team, keep the wheels, the wheels on the train as it's moving, and ensure the timeline and the budget is respected. And if it's not respected, then that decision is nicely escalated to the management structure that can provide the additional budgets, which by the way, the producers will do. They will come and they will like bitch and like, you know, all sweaty, like, oh my God, getting super passionate about like, and we only need $100,000 to deliver this amazing vision.
No, forget it. No, we don't have them. Oh dear.
Yes, that's always fun. But you know, in truth, we do quite a few times. We actually bake in a certain percentage, unbeknownst to the teams. We normally bake 10 to 15% buffer on top of the budget, so we don't have to say no when they come up with an actually good idea. When they come up with a bad idea, we'll tell them either kill it or kill something else to make room for it if you believe in it that strong.
Right. And then they have to choose.
So then they have to choose the features. Okay, so business intelligence, product managers, and data scientists. Notice the PBHs here. So sad. It's so hard to find those people. Yeah. You know what? The thing is, the data scientists, they could freaking working for finance industry, making tons of money. Tons of money. That, you know, that skill at operating complex databases with tons of data, that's an insurance company. And the product managers, such a rare beast. Because currently, I mean, you can't really grow them in the design field because they're not quants. They don't know statistics. Usually the design people, they don't come from like a math background.
Yeah, they don't.
So your best bet is to get a math person and to make them into a designer. Oh my God. Cool. So project management, that's, you know, we sometimes call the development manager, whatever, it's just terminology. It's pretty straightforward. They have juniors and seniors, you know, there's several levels. And here, the services side, it's mostly about community management and customer support on the game. We like to put this close to the development teams for obvious reasons. The community, as we've discussed, super important to the success of the game these days. And it's about listening to them, what they want. And especially in live ops, if you don't listen to the community, you're effectively being suicidal. And then outside of the studio structure, these teams are called development support. And we have QA and other services. QA, actually I said CSCM here, but it's incorrect. The CSCM is in the studio. But we have basically testers and automation engineers. For our mature projects in DevOps, we usually assign an automation engineer to write scripts. So we don't have to test everything manually.
BR is head of R&D and engineering is under R&D?
Engineering is under it, yeah. Yeah, and the person that runs R&D needs to be someone that is, you know, has been an engineer at some point and quite astute at that. But they don't need to be CTO level technical wizard. They just kind of need to have a sense of what's happening. The head of engineering, in this particular case, would be the person that carries the technical bit. Okay. So that's the structure. It applies to all our studios. So let me make this a little smaller. So it applies to Lorraine, Avalon, Amber Labs, the Live Ops team. We organize custom development. Even though it's a service team, it has a similar structure with a bunch of designers and engineers. It applies to our pitch team. So we're an agency. At any given time, we are pitching between 10 and 20 different clients. Let me give you a concrete example of this. Can you see this?
Wow.
Okay, so these are proposals that we've sent, and these are pitches that we're currently preparing. I'm especially excited about this one. Woo! And how do pitches look like? All right, let me show you some examples. Is a good one that we recently pitched to Gearbox. We didn't get it, which is what happens in 90% of the cases in our world. Okay, so that was a mobile game based on the Borderlands franchise. If you haven't played that game, here it's a lot of fun. I actually haven't played it yet, but okay, so this is the pitch. I'm gonna just run through it. And these are some elements of design. Mock-ups. These are original art we created. Squad-based shooter strategy.
Oh, nice.
Ooh. Expensive. And if you're trying to create something that has Borderlands quality 3D assets and all that, it's expensive. Also, part of our San Mateo studio. We had some proprietary tech, but we tend to use off-the-shelf solutions for everything else. Okay, that's a pitch. It was a good run, we had some interest, but you know, you gotta lose some to win some, I guess. And as I mentioned, we're pitching all the time, right? And that's why we have a pitch team. They are processing all of these opportunities. They are sourced through our business developers and agents. We have a network of agents. Where was I? Okay. So that's the pitch team right here. And there are not that many people in the pitch team. We have a good complement of staff, and sometimes we pull in people from the other studios to help out. This time for San Mateo is really small studio structure. They're basically set up for co-development using resources in Bucharest or Warsaw.
How often does it happen that you actually move one person to another studio because they are in the same guild? I think that's super interesting, right?
Yeah, you know what? Unfortunately, it happens fairly often. Now, so if you work on the NCSoft project, you're stuck there for until the ships. So let's say the development timeline for that was 1.5 years. If you were assigned a designer to that game, you're not moving. But if you are, let's say, assigned to live ops, there's more movement on live ops. Between projects, it can be different live ops projects, or you may join in the NCSoft project to like help out on something and then you jump back.
But you said it's not cool? I mean, you would like more movement or less?
No, I would
movement?
like less movement, and I'll explain why. Generally speaking, people hate to move off their project because they build deep familiarity with it and they love it. And then it's being taken away, they feel like they're letting the team down somehow. Yeah. It's like so weird. I mean, understandable, but in an ideal world, you move people from here and there and everything would be great. And you think, hey, there's more diversity of experience.
Right, exactly. That's what.
But they don't see it like that.
Okay. Wow.
We try to minimize it to the best extent possible. We're also, when we hire people, we're an agency. If you want to work on many interesting projects with many partners across many platforms, across many different systems to monetize, we are it. It doesn't get better than this. But if you want to stay on a project for 3 years and be stuck there for 3 years, we are not it. So we have people that come to us from Ubisoft or EA because they hate being on FIFA for 2 years.
Yeah.
Actually, and that's, we have people coming to us after being on FIFA for 10 years. And they're up to here with like, I don't want to see soccer
ever again in my life.
Football, sir. No more. No mas. No mas football.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so that's our structure. The last thing here is the most interesting one we have right now. It's a very small team. It's currently at the prototype phase on our next original IP, which will be a AAA console game.
Oh shit!
If we, 5 years
Long
into
run.
the future, because that will be the team that makes all the mistakes in the book as we figure out how to do that properly.
Who's that one? What team?
So that's Kos. Do you know Kos? Eugen Adela, he's the technical director. Kos is the creative director.
Nope.
Yeah, they're pretty skank-works. They're like 5 people now. So.
Cool. Are they like in a single studio, in a single
Yes.
division?
It's codenamed Originals, but we need to give them a studio name. We're going to do in console the same thing we've done on mobile, which we're going to make a game that will probably be a massive sink of money and possibly a failure. But it will get us the credentials to
Get in there.
Get in there. All right. So, back to preview.
Thanks. That was.
I was answering your guild question.
That was great. Thank you. I mean, it's just managing so many people's hard.
All right. So, technology plan. That's basically the TDD. Just iterated a bit. Comparative evaluation. I would not worry about that. Usability. So, here's the thing. You are now building a vertical slice. And it plays and looks beautiful. It's like exactly what you envisioned that game would be, and hopefully more, right? It's better than even your imagination. By the way, that never happens. That never happens. Let's say it's a fortunate example. Once you have that game, then you can truly test it with users. And the results that you're getting are golden, because this is the first time. The user is not even approximating or filling in the gaps with their imagination. You're giving them the full experience that they are going to be playing, albeit for a short duration of time. And play testing and focus testing, not optional. Again, I need to update this presentation because I just get smarter every year. But play test and focus test the smithereens out of your vertical slice. And that will tell you everything you need to know. It can truly legitimize and basically win you a green light without any issues. At the exit criteria for this stage, you definitely will have a budget and a timeline. And from then on, it is assumed that you will not deviate from it. Up until now, you could play with a budget. You're basically getting some free money to do what you need to do. From now on, you have to operate on the basis of a steady budget. And it's, again, relatively straightforward. I tell you, the back of the napkin calculation is you take that level times the number of levels you have to create to the game, and you get your budget. In practice, the better way to do this is at the task level. You can actually, based on your experience, you can quantify each task, each development task. How long you create an art asset? How long do you write a particular feature? And you can compile all the data into a production plan that is even more exact than high-level calculation that I alluded to earlier. And that's probably a better way to do it, and that's how we do it. We try to not just estimate high-level, we try to break down our production. So we use Agile. So we break down our production plan into epics and further down into tasks. And we can assign a value to each task based on our experience in the pre-production stage. Okay, that's pre-pro. Any questions? Yes?
I mean, you mentioned Agile when you're doing development, but from the phase activities, and I'm looking at it right there, it feels a lot like waterfall during the production phase. How exactly are you handling a vertical slice when you have to go through the phases of design and marketing? And I noticed that in your pitch as well. When you planned the pitch, you went all for big timeline, big budget, and how quickly can you deliver that value to just not fall into the waterfall trap?
Yeah, so we are using waterfall for certain tasks, such as art outsourcing. So waterfall on its own is not bad, but we are truly agile. We break down our development into sprints. We have a Scrum Master on the team that is usually somebody assigned from the project management guild. All I can say is that appearances can be deceiving and weird. If this is curious, maybe I can share some kind of agile documentation on how we do it. Let me see if I have it handy, and that will explain at a high level as well.
Sí.
Okay, I'm not sure if this is the best presentation. Give me 1 second to open the other one. No, so this is the, okay. This is the latest and hopefully greatest. And it looks a little bit strange. I mean, it's for internal training purposes only, so it's not the prettiest thing ever. Looking at practice, obviously there's a lot of theory on Agile, used in many industries. Agile evolves. There are several types of Agile: Scrum, water scrumful.
Water scrumful.
Water scrumful.
Yeah, that's like the combination where maybe you're building something that is very waterfall-like in nature, like a financial system, but you then have a creative portion where you want to kind of iterate more freely. We don't use either of those. Those are provided extreme examples of what you can do with Agile. So yes, Agile was created as a response to traditional waterfall practices. And nowadays it's shifting towards constant improvement. It's actually a lean technique. Agile is becoming a lean technique. And not only we have to go against old waterfall, but also old Agile practices. Yeah. Yeah, here we go. Okay. Many times product owner business analysts view the Spring Backlog as a Tetris game. Output. That is rarely the case. Consequently, panic. Let's take a look. Scope and basing. Carry it over to the next sprint and the next. That's not Agile. What Agile has become today? Certified ability to sprint estimate and with story points and conduct stand-up meetings. I can assure you, if you like walk into Amber, into any studio at Amber, every morning around, well, morning in studio time is like 11 a.m. But you know, around 11 a.m. you walk into Amber and you see the circles. They're all over the floor. All the teams are doing their stand-ups. And you know what's really cool? Even when they're co-developing with another team, they bring that team into the stand-up as well. So there will be like a video conference feed, and there's like a circle of people on the other end. Really cool. And okay. Alright, so modern Agile. Experiment, learn, deliver value continuously. That totally resonated. Make people awesome. Okay. Customer collaboration. Sorry, I'm moving so fast on this, but that's kind of like a 2-hour course with just these slides. Okay, best practices. That's important. User stories should be sliced vertically in small, functional, and testable deliverables. So don't stretch your user stories over more than one sprint. Each vertical slice should have its own value for delivery. Value for the client and user. Okay, that's not that insightful. Address and tackle the problems early in the process. Tailboarding. That's called tailboarding. Planning should be done for 80% of the team's capacity. The rest of 20% should be saved for, you know, buffer. Feedback loop should be presented in each milestone gate or after every sprint. Inspect, learn, and adapt to the product. Align expectations and improve our way of working. Discussion should be held about each deliverable. Entire Scrum team owns the quality, dev team plus client. Each sprint should have a goal that is directly connected against the green outcome. Alright, so tailboard. And this is our, effectively our Agile development.
So your pitch actually starts with that, with those strict faces.
Yes.
So you don't work curves and slices or pitches or prototypes. You just go by pitching it and see if it flies, and then you move forward.
Oh yeah. So you're asking a very important question about how we run our pitch process.
Yeah.
Okay, it's 80% fantasy because obviously we don't have. But there's some science to it, and that's if we have comps, because we pitch like crazy, right? So we have hundreds of pitches that we've created over time, and we also have quite a few projects that we deliver. So we'll look at, you know, what we've estimated in the past, and we have comps that we can measure against. What we've delivered, what we've estimated. Sometimes we can see a difference between what we estimated and what they eventually deliver, so we can calibrate the comps appropriately. So there is science to it, but ultimately, it's basically, we get all the discipline leaders. So there's a pitch meeting, right? It runs for 2 hours. We get all the disciplines leader in the meeting, and we break down the features that we have to build for a particular game. And then every discipline leader will estimate the time required to deliver that feature. And basically it becomes a kind of resourcing calculation. Like, in this phase we will probably need 2 designers. In this phase we'll need 10 designers, right? That's what the creative director will probably say, And then we have standard rates for each discipline. And we kind of multiply the resources in there with a number. And then check that number, the final number, against our prompts. Like, are we crazy? And sometimes we are. Sometimes we overestimate. And we check against the prompts. If it's generally aligned, then we're okay. We're going to submit that to the client. Now, here's what we don't have. We obviously don't know what it will take to build their game. We don't know how difficult the client is. The biggest unknown for us always is the demand coming from the client. Sometimes the clients are crazy. They no, but I mean, I can understand. I've been the buyer side in the past in my career, and you have all sorts of pressures and weird strategy shifts from your executive team. And on top of that, you don't know what you want. And then as you learn more about the game, you realize the things that you didn't know you wanted. So you add features. That's feature creep, right? All of these things will blow your budget, and you need to have a contractual mechanism to negotiate the variations. So yeah, pitching is not agile. It's kind of, let's see.
Yeah, it's interesting. It scared me a little bit, but now I'm a little bit more tame on the subject, because that's basically how we've been managing pitches. And it's a very empirical process. So, but when I saw that waterfall curve, I was like, are we doing something wrong? But no.
No. It's very hard to be precise. There's quite a great degree of estimation. And then, again, the most important thing is to realize what you don't know, and to be able to explain why you don't know it precisely to your client, and to have a contractual mechanism for handling all scope changes, which will invariably, even if you have the perfect plan, even if you actually build a vertical slice of that game in the past, even with that, things will always change. So the best thing is to have a commonly agreed mechanism to handle change. If you do that, you'll have a good relationship with your client. Otherwise, it's a nightmare, because they will have to go and obtain approvals for their executives. If they don't want to do that, they will feel like you're nickel and diming them. It just becomes a contentious relationship, like almost from the start. Because one thing that happens in the beginning is that you pitched a game, and as you go through the design process, working with the assigned producer on the publisher side, that guy or girl will come with their own ideas. They were nowhere near your pitch initially. And from the start, your design is going to point in a different direction than you originally envisioned. Now, in practice though, please also make sure that your rates are buffered enough to allow a little bit of wiggle room, because otherwise you don't want to go back to them for any small change, right? Only when it starts like hurting and really impairing your margin. So I would say, what's the good wiggle room? I don't know. You decide for what is good for your business. I would say a minimum of 20% buffer on top of whatever you pitch initially. By the way, that can help you too if you have like a really cheapskate customer or client, because they will want to negotiate the price. You give them 5% to shut them down, you're still okay. You still have 15% wiggle room.
If not, you're the asshole, right?
You actually will become the asshole,
right,
because you have to ask for money every time anything changes. So it's like ridiculous. Okay, so we learned agile. Okay, so this is up on the waterfall. Agile approach, check it out. CDP though, ground support, back support, armrest. Anyway, so I think that's a very cool way to explain the difference in Cool. Any more questions on reproduction?
Pre-production?
Yeah.
How I have a pretty small thing. How do you actually integrate like new technology, like the things that you maybe want to explore but you didn't actually know how to explore? For example, there's new platform with its own SDK or something like that. How do you integrate this? How do you make this decision to actually integrate this new technology or this new knowledge, or do not?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there are two things here. Obviously, you have the platform that may contain some unknowns. Maybe there's an iteration on the platform, or maybe it's a completely new platform that you don't know, which actually as an agency happens a lot, because you have customers coming to us and say, do you know platform X? And you're like, of course. And you're like scrambling like that. What the fuck is that? Where's the manual?
How do you spell it?
Luckily, because we have our labs team and we try to experiment with stuff all the time, actually we do have a little bit of knowledge usually. But I think the key is not necessarily always having the knowledge out of the box, but having the kind of structure and the kind of people that relish the opportunity to work on something new. So again, it comes down to how you hire. If you hire people to only do one thing for a long period of time in a steady environment, the agencies, they will be so, I don't know, frustrated, right, working in an agency environment. So if you hire well, you have these people that naturally, you don't even have to tell them, hey, let's explore platform X because it may be a business opportunity for us there. They'll do that themselves in the normal course of just being curious about stuff. So we, on platforms, it's easier. Why? Because platforms, if they're not brand new, so if they're existing platforms, the iteration that happens on a platform, the new features that are introduced on the platforms, they sit naturally within a continuum. Like they behave in a certain way. And there's a lot of residual knowledge that you can apply to any new feature that comes into the market. Yeah, you have to study it, how it works, how you integrate it within your game, assuming that you're deploying on that platform. Where we've seen the greatest challenges in the past were not with platforms, with the support technologies. You know, like, let's say we integrate Delta DNA for analytics, or Photon for multiplayer support, or Django for our database.
Right.
If we never worked with those systems, and we are somehow forced to do so. Maybe there's, you know, the publisher preference. They have a tech stack. Usually publishers have a tech stack, and they're saying this is our preferred analytics solution, backend, database, whatever it may be. There are a ton of things that can integrate. CRM, CMS, whatever. In that case, there can be quite a bit of a growing pain because there's nothing that truly prepares us for this. It's not just learning Photon, the technology of Photon. It's learning how to integrate Photon into our very special and unique game, into our very custom architecture. And that can produce quite a bit of friction. And sometimes you just cannot do it. And you go to Photon and be like, guys, what's going on? And they'll be like, you're doing something wrong. It's not our problem, you know? So then you have to analyze, and there's a lot of R&D cycles wasted on figuring that stuff out. Wasted. It's obviously not wasted because you eventually will figure it out given sufficient time and resources, but it is an investment that you're making.
But how heavily is to address this kind of stuff at pre-production?
So if you remember, we started technical work at the prototype.
Yes.
And continued through pre-pro. And time-wise, I mean, obviously this differs, depends on how much complex the game is and what platform and so on and so forth. but we are talking months there. Even in mobile development, pre-production will be lengthy-ish. I mean, not as lengthy. Okay, so let me give you percentage in terms of time. From concept all the way to the end of pre-pro, I would expect about 30% of the time spent in development at a minimum being expended. So if you're just considering proto and pre-pro, let's say for a project that runs for 1 year, 2 months. 2 months is a lot of research time. You will know from the very beginning that you are going to integrate Photon because you selected this in the course of building your system architecture, which is the first thing that you do. This is the first thing the technical director needs to do. Is like, okay, how are we going to assemble this game? What are the components? And then you will know, oh shit, we've never used that. Yeah. Right? And most of the time, the technical director will try to avoid using tech they don't already understand very well. And by the way,